Welcome back to the Deep Dive. It is Saturday, January 24th, 2026. And I have to say, looking at the massive stack of notes and articles and biographical data we have on the table today, I feel like we need to put on our lab coats. Or maybe our hard hats. I'm honestly not sure which piece of safety gear fits better for today's subject.
You know, for this particular deep dive, you probably need both. And maybe like a pair of high-end swimming goggles, just to be safe.
That is a very specific, and I have to say slightly ominous combination of gear, but it makes perfect sense once you realize who we're talking about.
It really does.
Usually on this show, we take a phenomenon or a complex concept like, the history of interest rates or the rise of AI, and we peel back the layers. But today, we're doing something a little bit different. We're looking at a human being. We're looking at a man who has arguably done more to change how we think about aging, mortality, and the very definition of health than almost anyone else in the 21st century.
I don't think that's hyperbole at all. I really don't. If you look at the cultural conversation around health right now, here in early 2026, the vocabulary we use, the concepts we just sort of take for granted, a huge chunk of that can be traced back to this one individual.
We are talking, of course, about Dr. Peter Attia.
Dr. Peter Attia, the longevity architect, as some people have started calling him.
Which is a perfect title, really.
It is a perfect title, because he doesn't just treat the body, he tries to redesign how we live in it. And the reason this is the perfect time to do this deep dive, the why now of it all, is because of that massive appearance he made just a few months ago, back in October 2025, on 60 Minutes.
Oh, that was a huge moment. I feel like that interview was absolutely everywhere. You couldn't open a browser without seeing a clip of it.
It really was a tipping point. You know, for years, really for the last decade, Attia was this kind of cult hero for the biohackers, the Silicon Valley tech founders, the people who were, tracking their blood glucose every 5 minutes and debating the nuances of rapamycin.
The hyper-optimizers.
The hyper-optimizers, exactly. But that 60 Minutes piece in October, that was the moment he crossed over. That was the moment he went from niche guru to mainstream authority.
It felt like the moment the rest of the world finally caught up to the conversation he's been having for 10 years.
Yes. It moved the conversation from, how do I hack my biology to live forever, to something much more practical. It became, how do I actually extend my health span so I'm not miserable for the last 20 years of my life?
That's the key term, isn't it? Health span, not just lifespan.
That's the whole game. My own father called me after that aired and asked if he should be doing rucking. And my dad thinks cardio is walking to the mailbox. So that's when you know there's been a shift.
That is incredible. And that is really our mission for today. We have a comprehensive biographical overview of his life, essentially his entire public record up to this morning.
Yeah.
And we want to unpack how he got here. Because when you look at his resume, when you look at the timeline of his life, it is chaotic. It's a zigzag.
It makes absolutely no sense on paper. If you were a career counselor looking at his path in real time, you would have told him he was ruining his life at least 3 distinct times.
Seriously. We're talking about a guy who started in mechanical engineering, went to a top-tier medical school, became a surgeon at the best hospital in the world, quit that residency, which is just, it's unheard of, by the way.
Completely unheard of.
Went into corporate consulting and somehow emerged as the doctor everyone listens to. It's a wild ride.
But that's the thesis I want to explore today. I want to argue that his background, that chaotic, messy, multidisciplinary background, is actually the secret sauce. It's the reason for his success. He couldn't be the architect of longevity if he had just stayed on the straight and narrow medical path.
So the detours were actually the destination.
Precisely. We're going to deconstruct the man who deconstructs the human body.
I love it. Okay, let's do it. Let's wind the clock all the way back. Before the podcasts, before the bestsellers, before he was hanging out with Thor, which we will definitely get to.
Oh, we will.
Let's go to Toronto, Ontario.
Great. Peter Attia, born March 19, 1973, in Toronto. And right off the bat, there's a detail in his biography that I think sets the stage for everything that comes later. He's the child of Coptic Egyptian immigrant parents.
Now, that is a specific detail, but why does it matter to the story? Is it just trivia?
I don't think so at all. We have to look at the sociology of that specific immigrant experience. Coptic Christians leaving Egypt in the 60s and 70s and coming to a place like Canada. This wasn't just a casual move for a better job. This was often a community seeking stability, safety, and, real opportunity away from sectarian pressures.
There's a lot of weight behind that decision to emigrate.
A tremendous amount of weight. And in those households, there's often this incredibly intense ethos of high achievement. You don't just get by in school, you excel. You maximize the opportunity that your parents sacrificed everything for.
There's a pressure to justify that sacrifice. You become a doctor, an engineer, or a lawyer. There's no option D.
Exactly. There's a built-in drive, a sort of relentless engine that gets installed at a young age. And you see that thread of intensity running through every single decision Attia makes later in life. He doesn't just do things, he obsesses over them. He masters them. That chip-on-the-shoulder energy, the need to prove one's worth through excellence is very, very powerful fuel.
Okay, so he's in Canada, he's driven, he's obviously very smart. He heads to Queen's University at Kingston. And here is the first real plot twist for me. If you want to be a world-famous doctor, you usually go pre-med, right? You study biology, you study chemistry, you memorize the Krebs cycle.
You would think so. That's the standard path. But Peter Attia graduates in 1996 with a Bachelor of Science in Mechanical Engineering and Applied Mathematics.
Engineering and math. This is where I want to pause, because I think this is the fundamental lens through which we have to view everything else he does. How does an engineer's brain work compared to a biologist's brain?
This is the crux of the whole story. I mean, it's everything. A biologist, traditionally, is an observer. They are taxonomists. They look at the natural world, this messy, wet, chaotic biological system, and they try to describe it. They say, this cell does this enzyme does that. They're comfortable with a certain amount of mystery and ambiguity because life is, messy.
They respect the complexity of nature, but they're often observing it from the outside.
Right. But an engineer looks at the world and sees a machine. A mechanical engineer specifically looks at forces, vectors, stress, thermodynamics, fluid dynamics. They don't just want to describe the bridge. They want to know the load-bearing capacity of the bridge to the decimal point.
Where they need the numbers.
They need the numbers. They want to know exactly where the failure points are. They ask, if I change input A, what exactly happens to output B? It's a first principles approach.
It's a systems mindset. It's about optimization, not just observation.
Exactly. It's problem solving. An engineer believes that if you have enough data and enough math, you can model the system and then you can fix it. You can optimize it. So when Attia eventually turns his eyes toward the human body, he doesn't see a mystical vessel of life. He sees a machine. A staggeringly complex one, but a machine nonetheless.
He sees a machine with pumps, the heart and filters, the kidneys, and structural supports, the bones.
And levers and pulleys in the musculoskeletal system. And he believes that if he can just get the math right, if he can figure out the thermodynamics of energy balance, the fluid dynamics of blood flow, the signaling pathways, he can hack the machine. That engineering lens is the foundation of his entire medical philosophy. He treats the body like a complex engineering problem that can be solved, or at least optimized, through applied mathematics and rigorous systemic analysis.
Okay, so that framework is critical. He wraps up at Queen's in '96 with this engineering brain. He's got the math skills. And then he makes the pivot. He heads to the U.S. Stanford University School of Medicine.
Which, let's be honest, is not exactly a safety school.
Not at all. But think about that jump. He goes from applied math directly into one of the most prestigious medical programs on the planet. I mean, the intensity of that shift.
It's massive. And it's important to note that Stanford is the perfect place for him. It sits right in the heart of Silicon Valley. It's an institution that values disruption. They love interdisciplinary thinking. They probably saw an application from a mechanical engineer and thought, this is interesting. This is different.
Let's see what this guy can do.
Exactly. If you're going to take a guy who thinks in algorithms and put him in a white coat, Stanford is the lab where you do that experiment. He's not just learning medicine. He's learning it in an ecosystem that rewards asking, why do we do it this way?
Yeah.
And can we build a better system?
So he graduates with his MD in 2001. He is officially Dr. Attia. And now he enters the belly of the beast. He starts his residency at Johns Hopkins Hospital in Baltimore. General surgery.
And we really need to stop for a second and appreciate what Johns Hopkins general surgery means. In the medical world, this is Mecca. This is where modern surgical residency was literally invented. Halsted, Osler, the giants of medicine walked those halls. It is historic.
It's military-grade training for doctors.
It is the most grueling, competitive, prestigious program in the country, if not the world. To land a spot there, it implies you are at the absolute top of the food chain. You are the elite of the elite. You are working 100-hour weeks. You are living in the hospital. You are seeing the most complex cases in the world. It's a forge.
And he wasn't just doing surgery,
Yep.
right? The source says he was also at the NIH, the National Institutes of Health in Bethesda, during this time.
Right. He spent 2 years there as a surgical oncology fellow at the National Cancer Institute, which is part of the NIH. He was investigating cancer immunotherapy for melanoma.
Which is incredibly heavy science. We're talking about the fundamental mechanics of cancer.
It's the frontier, especially back in the early 2000s. Immunotherapy, the idea of teaching the body's own immune system to fight cancer, was the absolute cutting edge. So let's just paint the picture here. You have a guy who is operating on patients at Hopkins, saving lives in the OR with his hands, and then going to the NIH to do high-level research on curing one of the deadliest cancers.
He is on the golden path.
Absolutely. He is set to become the Surgeon General or the chairman of surgery at a major university. He is winning the game of medicine by every conceivable metric.
And then the record's cracked.
The wheels come off, or more accurately, he rips the wheels off the car himself and sets it on fire.
The source is very clear on this, and it's just shocking when you read it plainly. It says, from 2001 to 2006, Attia began a residency, but never completed his residency, nor did he complete a fellowship or become board certified. He spent 5 years, 5 years of sleepless nights, of incredible stress, of life and death decisions, and then right before the finish line, he drops out.
It's stunning. In the culture of medicine, this is unheard of. It is career suicide. You have invested a decade of your life, hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt, your entire identity, and you walk away with no board certification. Technically, he couldn't even practice as a surgeon after all that training.
So what does this tell us about him? Why would anyone do the work to get to Hopkins and then walk away? Is it failure? Burnout? Or is it a realization?
I think it's a profound realization, and to understand it, we have to look at the fundamental conflict between his engineer brain and the medical system he found himself in.
Okay.
Traditional medicine, and especially surgery, is reactive. Think about it. A surgeon is a damage control expert, a master mechanic for a car that has already crashed. You only see the patient when the disaster has already happened. You have a gunshot wound, I'll sew it up. You have a tumor that has been growing for 10 years, I'll cut it out. Your appendix burst, I'll remove it.
It's always after the fact. The bridge has already collapsed, and the surgeon is the guy pulling people from the wreckage.
Exactly. For an engineer who wants to optimize the system and prevent failure, surgery must have felt incredibly frustrating. He was just cleaning up messes that, in his view, shouldn't happen in the first place. He didn't want to be the guy with the mop. He wanted to be the guy designing the building so the pipes didn't burst.
I see. So he's looking at a patient with end-stage diabetic complications on the operating table and thinking, this all started with a poor diet 20 years ago. Why wasn't anyone intervening then?
Precisely. He realized that saving one life at a time in the OR, while heroic, wasn't actually addressing the root cause of why people were dying. He was treating the symptom, not the system. And for an engineer, that's an untenable position.
That is a powerful realization. But still, to quit, that takes an unbelievable amount of guts or madness.
Probably a bit of both. But look at where he went next. This is the crucial part. He didn't go to another hospital. He didn't open a general practice clinic. He left medicine entirely. He joined McKinsey & Company.
The consulting firm.
Yeah.
The guys in the expensive suits who make PowerPoint decks.
The very same. He went to the Palo Alto office, and this, to me, is the most fascinating plot twist in the whole story.
Because on the surface, it looks like a sellout move.
Right.
Oh, the surgery is too hard, so I'll go make a bunch of money telling corporations what to do. That's the easy narrative.
That's the cynical view, for sure. But if we dig deeper into the outline, I think this is actually where he learned the most important lesson of his entire career. Look at the specific practice areas he joined: the corporate risk practice and the healthcare practice.
Corporate risk. Okay, let's unpack this. How on earth does corporate risk connect to longevity?
This is the key that unlocks everything. What is risk management in a business context? It is the science of looking at a complex system like a bank's investment portfolio or an airline's fleet maintenance schedule and predicting the future.
It's about forecasting.
It's about forecasting and mitigation. You don't wait for the bank to fail. You look at the data today and you say, okay, the stock is up. But there is a statistical probability, a risk cloud, that interest rates will rise next year, or supply chains will break, or a competitor will launch a new product. You model those future possibilities.
And you act on them now.
And you act now to mitigate that future risk. You spend money today to buy safety in 10 years. You change your strategy today to avoid a catastrophe tomorrow. You are playing a long game based on probabilities.
I see exactly where you're going with this.
He took that corporate risk framework and he realized, wait a minute, this is how we should be treating the human body.
Instead of waiting for the heart attack, the catastrophic bank failure,
Yeah.
we should be looking at the subtle risk factors now.
Exactly. The standard model of medicine, what he calls medicine 2.0, says, your fasting blood sugar is 98, that's normal, you're fine. Come back when it's a 126 and you have diabetes. The risk management model, what he would later call medicine 3.0, says, your fasting blood sugar is 98, but your insulin is creeping up, your triglycerides are high, and your HDL is low. That employs a 20% increased statistical risk of metabolic failure in a decade. We need to intervene today to mitigate that future risk.
He brought the actuarial tables into the exam room. He started treating health like a long-term investment portfolio.
He did. He realized that longevity isn't about magic pills or wishful thinking. It's about rigorous risk management. It's about understanding the probabilities and then systematically, aggressively doing everything you can to stack the odds in your favor. So McKinsey wasn't a detour. McKinsey was the graduate school for his entire philosophy.
That is the aha moment. The engineer needed the risk consultant's toolkit to become the doctor he was always meant to be.
Perfectly put. The synthesis of the engineer, who understands systems, the surgeon, who understands anatomy and trauma, and the risk consultant, who understands long-term probability. That convergence creates the Peter Attia persona we know today. He moved from treating acute trauma to managing long-term statistical probabilities of disease.
That is fascinating. So he spent some time in the corporate world, probably making nice money, wearing suits instead of scrubs. But clearly, that medical itch didn't go away, because around 2012, he starts popping up in the public eye again, but in a very different way.
Right. This is the beginning of what we could call the platform building era, and it starts with a very, very sharp focus on one specific thing: nutrition.
Right. He co-founds NewSI, the Nutrition Science Initiative, in 2012, and he does it with Gary Taubes.
And Gary Taubes is a heavyweight in the world of nutrition journalism. He wrote the book, Good Calories, Bad Calories. He was the guy really pushing the idea that sugar and refined carbs were the enemy, not dietary fat. He was the champion of the carbohydrate insulin model of obesity.
And Attia was all in on this for a while, right? He was a big proponent of ketogenic diets.
He was a true believer at that stage. He used himself as a guinea pig, got into deep ketosis, tracked all his biomarkers. NewSI's stated goal was to fund rigorous Manhattan Project-style science to prove what causes obesity. They wanted to settle the diet wars once and for all.
This is also when he gave that famous TED-Med talk in 2013.
It is. I remember that talk. It was very personal, very emotional. He talked about his own history with metabolic syndrome despite being very active, and how he had unfairly judged an obese patient with diabetes when he was a surgeon, only to realize later that he'd had the causality all wrong. It was a mea culpa, and it resonated with a lot of people.
I want to track the evolution of his blog during this time because I think the names tell a story. It started as the Eating Academy.
Which sounds pretty benign, you know, like a cooking school or a diet blog.
And then it rebranded to War on Insulin.
Now, that is an aggressive title. War on Insulin. That's not a suggestion. That's a declaration of hostility.
It sounds like a crusade.
It was. At that time, in the early 2010s, Attia was very focused on the idea that insulin resistance was the root of all evil: cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, obesity. He saw insulin as the central node connecting all of them. So if you control insulin, you control health. It's a very engineer-like way to think, find the single most important leverage point in the system, and pull it as hard as you can. He was looking for the silver bullet.
But then the name changed again. It became simply peterattiaMD.com.
And that rebrand is symbolic. I think it represents his intellectual evolution from a diet warrior to a longevity physician. He realized that nutrition, while critically important, is just one pillar.
Right.
You can have perfect insulin levels and still die of a fall at age 75 because you have no muscle mass and poor balance, or you can have a great diet and die of a heart attack because your ApoB is through the roof.
He had to broaden the scope of his risk management.
He had to. He moved from a reductionist view, it's all about the insulin, to a systems view. It's the metabolism, the mildas and the lipids and the psychology and the exercise and the sleep. The shift to simply peterattiamd.com suggests a broader, more holistic, and frankly more humble medical brand. It's no longer just about insulin or keto, it's about the entire organism over its entire lifespan.
And that leads us to 2014 when he founded his private clinic. But this wasn't a walk-in for a flu shot kind of clinic, was it?
Oh, not at all. This was the prototype for what he calls Medicine 3.0. It was a private, concierge-style clinic dedicated specifically to longevity medicine. This is where he starts applying that McKinsey corporate risk framework to actual high-net-worth patients who are willing to pay for it.
So what does that actually look like in practice for a patient?
It means deep, deep data. We aren't talking about a 15-minute annual physical where a doctor tells you to eat less and move more. We are talking about hours and hours of patient intake, continuous glucose monitors, advanced lipid panels that most regular doctors don't even know how to read, looking at particle numbers, not just cholesterol
A
concentrations.
whole 9 yards.
Full genetic sequencing, VO2 max testing, DXA scans for bone density and body composition. He was applying that McKinsey risk management strategy to individual patients, treating them like high-performance Formula One race cars that needed constant data monitoring and tuning to prevent a crash.
So he's got the clinic for the elite, he's got the blog for the public, but then comes the real explosion.
Yeah.
The podcast, the Peter Attia Drive.
This is where he really changes the landscape, because he starts having weekly interviews with the top experts in the world on these subjects. And these aren't 20-minute sound bites for morning TV. These are 2, 3, sometimes 4-hour deep dives into metabolic health, lipidology, rapamycin, zone 2 training, sleep science.
It's intense. I mean, some of those episodes are basically graduate-level seminars. You need a notebook to listen to them. But people loved it.
They did, because he respected the audience's intelligence. In a world of 30-second TikTok health tips, Attia was offering the masterclass. He didn't dumb it down. And that attracted a very specific, influential following, which leads us directly to his connection with the Hollywood and Silicon Valley elite.
We have to talk about the Tim Ferriss effect. Attia had a chapter in Tim Ferriss's massive book, Tools of Titans, that definitely put him on the map for the whole life hacker crowd.
Absolutely. Ferriss was a huge amplifier. But the real mainstream breakthrough, the moment my mom learned who Peter Attia was, has to be the Limitless documentary series with Chris Hemsworth.
Oh man, Limitless. National Geographic, Disney Plus gain. This was a major production. You have Thor himself trying to hack his own body.
Directed by Darren Aronofsky, no less. This was not some low-budget YouTube series. It was high-production value cinematic. And Attia wasn't just a talking head consultant. He had a central role on screen. He was the guide. He was the Virgil to Hemsworth's Dante, leading him through the underworld of aging.
And there's that one moment in the show. It's in episode 5. I think everyone who watched it remembers it. It's when Attia sits down with Chris Hemsworth to give him some news from his genetic tests.
The 8-year-before revelation. It was a stunning piece of television.
Right. Tell us what that is for people who might not know.
So Attia ran a deep genetic panel on Hemsworth, and he found that Hemsworth has 2 copies of the APOE4 allele. He got one from his mom and one from his dad. This is a specific genetic variant that is very strongly linked to an elevated risk of developing Alzheimer's disease. Some studies suggest having 2 copies increases your lifetime risk by as much as 8-12 times compared to the general population.
And you could see the look on Hemsworth's face. I mean, here's a guy who is, for all intents and purposes, a physical specimen. He is Thor. And he's being told on camera, hey, your genetics say you have a very high probability of facing this devastating neurodegenerative condition.
It was a powerful cultural moment because it took the idea of genetic testing out of the abstract, scary hospital setting and put it into the context of, wait, even superheroes have genetic risks. It just shattered the illusion of invincibility that we project onto these celebrities.
But more importantly, Attia didn't just drop the bomb and leave.
No, that would be medicine 2.0. You have the gene, good luck, see you when you have symptoms. Attia immediately went into engineer mode. He said, okay, this is your risk factor. This is the known structural weakness in your biological bridge. Now, how do we engineer your life to mitigate that risk? How do we change the inputs to change the output?
How do we engineer your life? There is that engineer coming back out.
Always. It's his default setting. He pivoted immediately to actionable steps. Incredibly rigorous sleep hygiene, sauna used to increase heat shock proteins, very specific types of exercise to improve glucose metabolism and blood flow to the brain, managing lipids. It mainstreamed the idea that you can know your genetic destiny and change the outcome through aggressive early lifestyle interventions. It wasn't a death sentence. It was a schematic for how Hemsworth needed to live his life.
It's powerful. So after Limitless, he's a household name. He's recognized in Time magazine's list of influential people in health in 2024, but he hadn't written the book yet. I mean, he had the blog, the podcast, the show, but not the magnum opus that ties it all together.
Until March 28th, 2023. That's when Outlive, The Science and Art of Longevity comes out, co-authored with the great Bill Gifford.
And this book was just a monster. The New York Times Magazine called it a runaway bestseller. It was #3 on the Amazon charts for nonfiction in August of 2023. It was everywhere. You couldn't walk through an airport without seeing that black and orange cover.
Yeah. And we have to look at the title carefully. Outlive, The science and the art of longevity.
We touched on this in the intro, but let's go deeper. Why that distinction? Why the art? I get the science part. That's his whole brand.
The science is the data. It's the biochemistry. It's knowing that you need to lower your ApoB levels to X or increase your VO2 max to Y. That's the math. It's binary. It's true or false. It's the what.
But the art?
The art is the application. The art is the how. It's how do you actually get a messy, emotional, busy human being to do those things consistently for 40 years? How do you weave these protocols into a life that is still joyful and not a prison of optimization?
That's a great distinction because knowing what to do is the easy part. Actually doing it day in and day out is incredibly hard.
Exactly. The science says a 3-day fast is beneficial for inducing autophagy. The art asks, if I tell this specific patient with their specific psychological makeup and life stresses to fast for 3 days while they become miserable, binge eat afterwards, and quit the program entirely. The art is the psychology. It is the translation of data into sustainable behavior. This is where the engineer had to learn to be a healer.
And the word outlive itself is so interesting. It implies competition. It implies outpacing something.
It does. It implies that average aging is a disaster, which, if you look at the statistics for chronic disease in the last decade of life, it is. The default path for most people is a slow, steady decline into disease and frailty. To outlive means to outpace those statistical norms. It implies you are competing against the curve.
And that connects perfectly to what he's been talking about more recently, especially in that 60 Minutes interview from just this past October 2025.
Yes, let's bring right to the present. He's on 60 Minutes, the biggest stage in broadcast journalism, and he drops this concept that has kind of become his slogan for 2026. Life is a sport.
Life is a sport. It's such a simple, sticky phrase.
It's so good.
What does he actually mean by that? Because I'm not an athlete. I sit in a chair and record deep dives. Is life a sport for me?
Especially for you. His argument is that aging is fundamentally a physical event. It is a grueling physical challenge. As you get older, you lose muscle mass, that's sarcopenia. You lose bone density, osteoporosis. Your balance degrades. Your aerobic capacity plummets. If you want to be able to pick up your grandchild when you are 80 or carry your own groceries up a flight of stairs or get off the floor without help, that requires a specific, measurable level of strength, stability, and cardiorespiratory fitness.
So you have to train for it, like you would for a marathon.
Exactly. You don't just age gracefully by accident any more than you'd accidentally run a sub-4-hour marathon. You have to train for what he calls the centenarian decathlon.
I love that term. The centenarian decathlon. It's brilliant.
It's the list of physical tasks you want to be able to do at the very end of your life when you are 90 or 100, and you train for them now.
Give me some examples. What are the events in the decathlon?
Okay, so one event might be, can you lift a 30-pound suitcase into an overhead bin? That requires a certain amount of overhead press strength. Another one. Can you carry 2 heavy bags of groceries up 3 flights of stairs? That's a loaded carry with an incline, which tests grip strength and aerobic fitness.
Okay, I like this.
Another big one, can you get up off the floor using only one hand for support? Or no hands? That tests hip mobility, core strength, and lower body power. A surprisingly difficult task for many people over 60.
So his point is, if you want to be able to do that at 80, you have to be much, much stronger than that at 50.
Yes, because biology is cruel. You are losing capacity every year after a certain age. You need a reserve. You need to be strong enough now to afford the inevitable loss of strength later. You treat your 80-year-old self as the athlete you are coaching today.
That really reframes the purpose of exercise. It's not about looking good in a mirror. It's about building the physical armor you're going to need to survive old age. It's functional.
It's entirely functional. And it ties back to the risk management again. Falls are a leading cause of death and disability in older adults. Strong legs and good balance mitigate that risk. Heart disease is the #1 killer. A high VO2 max mitigates that risk. And Attia emphasizes structured exercise. Not just taking a walk, but lifting heavy things, getting your heart rate up into specific zones, training stability, because the event of old age is coming, whether you trained for it or not.
Man, that is both incredibly inspiring and, I have to admit, slightly terrifying.
That's the Attia brand in a nutshell.
It really is.
Yeah.
Now, before we wrap up, we have to touch on the man himself a little bit, because he doesn't just preach this stuff from an armchair. He does some pretty extreme things.
He definitely walks the walk, or in one specific case from the source material, he swims the swim.
The Catalina Channel crossing.
Right. Back in 2005, he swam across the channel between Santa Catalina Island and Los Angeles. That is not a casual dip in the ocean. That is roughly 20 miles of cold, open ocean. He was only the 120th person to ever do it at the time.
2005. So that was right in the middle of his dropout phase from surgery.
Right around that time. I think it shows the level of psychological and physical discipline he has. You're in the water for 10, 12, 14 hours. In the cold.
Oh.
In the dark. With currents and marine life. Sharks. You don't swim that channel without an almost pathological ability to endure suffering and stay focused on a distant goal.
Why do you think he did it? What was he trying to prove?
I think he has a fundamental need to test the limits of the machine. His own machine. He needed to prove to himself that his mind could override his biology. And I think that personal experience with extreme physical discipline informs his medical advice. He knows what the body is capable of if you push it, because he's pushed his own to the absolute brink.
And where is he now in early 2026?
He's living in the Austin, Texas area, married to his wife, Jill Attia. They have 3 children, so he's got the family life alongside the professional mission.
So he's a dad. He's living in Texas. And he's still writing, still podcasting, still trying to engineer a better way to age.
And interestingly, the source notes he is a Canadian-American author. He still holds that dual identity. The immigrant kid from Toronto who came down, conquered the American medical establishment, then decided he didn't like it, left it, and then rebuilt it in his own image from the outside.
It really is an incredible story. When you lay it all out like that, you see the threads connecting everything. The zigzags start to look like a straight line in retrospect.
If we look at the summary of his career, it's a masterclass in convergence. You have the engineer's love of systems, the mathematician's love of data, the surgeon's understanding of anatomy, the risk consultant's focus on long-term probability, and the athlete's discipline and tolerance for discomfort.
And when you combine all those things, you get Peter Attia. You get the architect of longevity.
Precisely. He didn't just learn medicine, he engineered a new way to practice it. He shifted the entire paradigm from medicine 2.0, which is waiting for you to get sick, and then treating the sickness, to medicine 3.0, which is preserving health and preventing the sickness from ever happening.
So here's the question we leave you with today. And it comes straight from that life is a sport philosophy. If life is indeed a sport, and your 80-year-old self is the athlete you are training, are you actually training? Or are you just sitting on the sidelines, hoping you get lucky in the fourth quarter?
That's the question. Are you looking at your health data as a medical chart, which is a record of the past? Or are you looking at it as an engineering schematic, which is a blueprint for the future? Because one of those views is passive, and the other gives you the tools to build something that lasts.
Something to think about as you head into your week. Maybe go lift something heavy today.
Or at least go for a structured walk and get your heart rate up.
Exactly. Thanks for diving in with us. We'll see you next time.